Chris Vavra. I'm the Senior Editor for Plant Engineering. Welcome to this installment of the Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge series. Maintenance is a crucial aspect of manufacturing and helps workers remain safe and productive and keeps machinery operational and lasting longer than ever. But maintenance, though, is so much more than that. It's a philosophy and a discipline, and how it is applied differs from company to company and person to person. So how do you keep maintenance at a high level, and what does your company practice to stay consistent in their quality? This series examines how subject matter experts and their companies work to keep maintenance at the highest possible level. Today's subject matter expert is Scott Dowell, Senior VP and GM for Wesco. He'll be discussing the industrial Internet of Things role in maintenance and how it has changed in the way people work and what some of its benefits are, as well as some of the challenges engineers still face. Welcome, Scott. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Chris, thank you, and appreciate you having me.
Likewise. So I guess we'll start with this. When you look at maintenance, what are the current trends you're seeing in industrial manufacturing facilities?
I think manufacturers are always working hard to improve their overall equipment effectiveness, be as productive as possible. What's changed a bit, especially over the last year or so, is they're deploying digital to go do that, right? It's all about how can we create this ecosystem of digital devices that provide us data, really de-silos the data, if you want to think about it that way, takes the data out of each individual piece of equipment and puts it into, that ecosystem to go help them be as effective as possible, as they continue to progress in their manufacturing journey. I think as you look at it, everybody's on kind of a different path when it comes to or a different part of the path when it comes to where they are in that digital journey. They start with connecting, right? They deploy sensors everywhere. They create connectivity. They try to network that together, and they just kind of create this opportunity to have access to the data, to visualize it as best they can. That's become a pretty consistent business practice now. Sensors on anything that they could possibly put a sensor on. Then once they collect it, right, you're talking about networking at the edge of a factory floor, pulling the machines together. Then they get all of that into one place, and at that point they've got this massive amount of data that they then have to go figure out what to do with, and that's really where we see the trend is to collect it. The trend, and most companies are now, and most facilities are now collecting it. The trick is to know how to, leverage the right expertise, the right consultants, for lack of a better term, to help you make good decisions, provide predictive maintenance, and keep the factory running as efficiently as possible. That continues to be a little bit of where the industry is not fully matured yet, right? They're able to get the data, and now what do you do with it, and how do you use it to be more successful?
Right, and you say, it's become more digitalized, and the IIoT, has really come on, particularly in the last several years, as a way of transforming not just maintenance, but all kinds of manufacturing operations. But when it comes to maintenance, how is the IIoT changing how maintenance engineers handle some of these day-to-day challenges? And what's been the biggest change from your experience in how the IIoT is being utilized?
Yeah, so I would say, one, it's gone from very analog to I'll go back and use the term to very digital, right? A lot of maintenance work was scheduled and performed on spreadsheets and in Excel, right? You kept a project schedule on your desktop. Now there's a lot of interactive opportunity to go in and through apps, through augmented reality to actually see what's going on, to schedule those things, and to be ahead of what's potentially any sort of challenge that may be coming down the path, right? Anything that could be wearing out, anything that you are seeing that's creating defects in the process. I would say for an engineer or a maintenance person, they have an incredible amount to learn, right? You might have a 20-year-old piece of equipment sitting beside a brand new one that came in. The 20-year-old piece of equipment, you may have limited amounts of connectivity to. The new piece of equipment, you might be putting on, some augmented reality goggles and running through a list of apps to figure out how to go understand what's happening and get critical information about that machine. So the complexity of that is is very is very challenging to go address. And so a lot of companies are struggling. A lot of customers of ours are struggling with exactly how to get those two things to work together: existing equipment, new equipment, and what it looks like. But it is giving those maintenance engineers a lot more ability to control the process, right? It gives them proactive information versus just reactive information. It gets them ahead of fires by leveraging that information. It tells them what parts they're replacing more often. As I said a minute ago, it helps them schedule their work and do it in a way that's optimized versus reactive. It uses that historical data and real-time data to help them create parts lists and all kinds of things that they've had to manually manage in the past. And a lot of this technology now will manage warranties for them and do and track repairs over time. So, really beneficial in how all that works. I would say the other piece is that really, it creates an opportunity for a more fully connected worker. And what I mean by that is you kind of can be, you can view performance and productivity, any defects that are happening from basically anywhere in the world. So the productivity that's driven from that, their ability to respond more quickly, do it potentially without having to actually be on site and generate a positive outcome, again, from anywhere in the world is pretty transformational.
Yeah. And in addition to all of, being able to connect everything, you mentioned AR, augmented reality and virtual reality as well. From a safety standpoint, these tools are also beneficial, not only improving maintenance, but worker safety as well, right?
Exactly. It's so we'll talk a little bit about kind of the better insights, right? We do some work with a lot of different manufacturers of augmented reality, both equipment and software. And if you look at kind of the data that they walk through, you're talking about with AR deployed to a maintenance staff, fully deployed to a maintenance staff, you're talking about something like 50% reduction time to diagnose an issue, 50% reduction time to achieve kind of competency for an engineer learning to work on a new piece of equipment, something they've never worked on for, or someone, let's say you're bringing in, the workforce is aging across a lot of this maintenance force. And so as you bring new people in, you need to get them trained. You get a big boost from an AR standpoint and a VR standpoint in the time it takes to get up to speed on being able to actually work on that equipment. There's somewhere estimated around a 30% reduction in equipment downtime when you're using these types of solutions. We talked briefly about that connected workforce and the not having to, jump somebody on a plane or get them, in their car driving 2 hours in the middle of the night when something goes wrong because of the connectivity of the whole thing. And then just a safer environment when you're talking about potentially being able to see what's going on, impact whatever issue or whatever might be happening in a hands-free environment where you don't have any concerns with someone getting themselves hurt trying to get a look at a piece of equipment. I think there's when you talk about augmented reality, we were involved in a project with a major kind of a big steel manufacturer recently, and kind of pulling together smart sensors and networking tech and AI and robotics, and deploying what's essentially a robot mobile dog, with kind of LiDAR and infrared and optical zoom attached, to go kind of walk around this mill and read, read gauges, detect thermal anomalies, do acoustic sensing to make sure things sound the way they're supposed to sound, detect if people are where they're supposed to be and make sure they're not where they're not supposed to be, you know, overview, collision sensing. And this is all in an environment where a person would have to have on significant amount of heat protection, to just keep from getting injured. You can send this robot in to look around and see what's going on, read the sensors, read the gauges, understand everything that's happening, before you have to suit somebody up and risk the safety of a person to go look at that. So those are the kinds of things we're seeing that are truly impactful, and just create a better working environment for everybody on the maintenance staff.
Yeah, there's so much information the IIoT can bring to the maintenance engineer to make them safer and make their jobs better, but it's almost sometimes too much information. You feel like they're getting information overload, and they get all this information, they don't know what to do with it, they don't know how to be effective in their jobs with it. So what are some best practices to not overwhelm the engineers and get them the information they need when they need it?
Identifying kind of upfront, right? Typically, when you're deploying something like IIoT, you're deploying that kind of infrastructure of technology to support what you need. Really upfront, need to identify the improvements and efficiencies that you want to get from that data ahead of time. What problems are you trying to solve, and work on solving for those first. Boiling the ocean, not, tends to give you that kind of tsunami of data that nobody knows what to do with, and just kind of leaves you stranded without the kind of the critical information you need to take next steps. I would say the software is critical, right? While you can collect a bunch of information, the software that's chosen to kind of manage that, how interactive it is, how user-friendly it is, how quickly people can get up to speed on using it, is really essential in determining, the output and the frequency of that output, right? Is that daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it all of that? How do you want it? How often do you want to see it, to make it work? And then I think, building that, I call it a management operating system, right? How do you operationalize the use of that information, right? You create those dashboards, you've got that information, you're tracking what you want to, you're working to solve a problem. But how do you then pull that into your day-to-day operating model, whether that's existing or you tweak that a little bit to use it, to be able to leverage those outcomes, make decisions, and just continue to move forward. So I think if you walk into, basically any factory, there's always a board, right? It might, it might be tracking lean productivity. It might be tracking errors, defects. It might be tracking, there might be an OEE, an operating equipment effectiveness chart that's up on the board. A lot of that can now be at your fingertips and real time if you want it to be, but you then have to build that into how you're gonna work. And so the change management of that, ensuring that you do that, ensures that the investment that you made around IIoT and everything that you're doing, is returned, and you're also getting the outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, and with engineers, the veterans know their environments best and have a kind of a sixth sense about this. And younger workers might take better to the technology, but they don't have that institutional knowledge the veteran worker does. So with that, how can the veteran workers best take advantage of the IIoT to improve their jobs? And are there some roadblocks for them in adopting the technology, to maximize their benefits?
I do think there's a little bit of a gap in some places, right? I think all of us, I don't, it doesn't really matter what you do for a living. I think all of us, when we've been doing something for a period of time, we've got a certain amount of expertise,
Hmm.
a certain amount of tribal knowledge and institutionalized knowledge that makes us feel like we kind of know the answers. I think um, being open to the change is hugely important. I think most of these, the kind of maintenance engineers are working on, they're doing continuous training or continuing education. They're doing training. They're keeping them, they've for years always kept themselves up to speed on
Hmm.
different changes and what's going on. Um, Whether it's electrically, whether it's from an integration standpoint, automation, whatever it might be. Um, I think companies need to help pull this type of technology, the IIoT piece, into that continuous education,
Hmm.
whether it's AI, whether it's augmented reality, machine learning, whatever it might need to be. I will say it's gotten significantly simpler over time. There's a lot more
Hmm.
apps now than there used to be, right? Used to be very complex. Um, and now most of these of the bigger suppliers of these types of solutions have apps. It's easy to use. It's not, I don't want to say it's as simple as using your smartphone, but it is as simple as connecting through an app like that and then leveraging your traditional expertise. They tie together to go get this done. So I think the focus has to change. Roadblocks are, we see them today after a significant amount of time in an analog world. Um, it's easy to dismiss that something could make things better. Um, but I think if people give it a chance, you will see you get the insights from this that maybe are a bit different than the way you've looked at things in the past. The opportunities there to get a little more information or the same information in a little bit of a different way can make everybody's life more efficient. When we talk to people that have been doing, kind of been working, we'll say on a plant floor with factory automation for a long time and are trying to take the next steps into this. Um, Most of these people are really very technically savvy. We're kind of cutting edge as this has come along. So it's just another step in the process um,
Yeah.
that actually makes everybody that will actually make their lives a lot easier, will sustain them through the rest of their career and differentiate them, across their peer groups with other companies.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a mental adjustment, one they got to be open to. And I think you're right about the simplicity. If you show them like, hey, it may not be as simple as doing it on your phone, but giving them, those kinds of tools, like, hey, this is how simple it could be, and giving them the encouragement. Sounds like if you're positive about it, it could go a long way in that respect.
Yeah, I think the band, and I think that I think you can I don't think it's easy to understand the bandwidth you can create for yourself
Hmm.
in doing, more proactive things um, for your employer, for the company that you work for, by taking some of this, I'll call it, um, some of this tactical activity that had to occur in the past without all this connectivity and the data. Um, you streamline that, it makes it creates answers for you that much faster, um, and lets you move on to things that really continue to add more and more and more value in your role.
Yeah, and that's kind of the exciting next step is, having so much of this process kind of automated. Now the maintenance engineer has to ask themselves, what do I do now? What's the next step?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
I completely agree. And the truth is, it's changing so fast, right?
Yeah,
Um, we are in a very different place than we were 5 years ago, and we work hard every day to try to figure out where we need to be 5 years from now, and what that's going to look like. I do believe, every like I talked about earlier, every new piece of equipment that's coming in, you know, has a newer, better technology on it than the one you got last year or the year before. And so, keeping up with that, the complexity of that is huge. And I think having the right partners in the marketplace, leveraging those partners, right? Because that's, these, what's the right way to say this? A lot of the engineers and maintenance engineers that are out there, they're doers, right? They're used to taking ownership and going and fixing. And and those, it's sometimes hard for those people with that type of makeup and personality that are used to solving their own problems to reach out and create the right partnerships to be even more productive in the future. And so that's definitely an opportunity, as we look forward.
yeah. And I guess we'll close you out on this one. IIoT brings so much potential and can offer so many benefits. But what are some challenges that continue to persist even with the IIoT's growing role in maintenance? And what continues to be kind of a thorn in the side of the maintenance engineer?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest challenges is how complicated it is, and that there really isn't there isn't a one size fits all out there, right? There's not something you just go take and plug in and it works and it's done
Right.
and you learn it and it's over. The next piece of equipment that comes in is going to be enabled by a different manufacturer with potentially different with a different software package attached to it. There's a lot of the people we talk to are very focused on trying to pull everything together into kind of that one ecosystem where it's all connected and it all talks together. But budgets and capex projects and labor shortages and different things, consistently get, just supply chain challenges where some factories are still very, very, very much constrained in producing as much as they can as fast as they can to continue to get caught up. Anything with a chip still continues to be constrained. So, there's some things that are out of their control that don't allow the kind of completion of what would be the right infrastructure to optimize the process, right? So some of those things get in the way. It is getting better, from a supplier standpoint. There's more comprehensive solutions out there, and I think that will get there, but it's still really complex to try to piece it together. That's why when I talk about working with the right partners, that can help you make some sense of it, and more than anything, help you create a plan on the steps you want to take to get to where you're trying to go on the journey. And so I think the other thing I would say is, and one of the biggest things we see out there that's a huge challenge for everybody is cybersecurity. As you talk about getting digital and connecting everything together, the risks associated that with new pathways created for bad actors to potentially get access to the company, and grab data, hold data for ransom, do a lot of different things. That's huge. And so, figuring that out as a solution, connecting the right, we'll call it factory digital infrastructure to the IT teams inside of these companies, and making all of that work together to ensure the right firewalls are in place and things are happening. That's a huge challenge that we need to that everybody's continuing to try to fix. You see a lot happening, in the ERP systems or the operating systems for major corporations. You don't hear a lot about what they're doing to harden and create a safe environment for the data that's generated on the factory floor. And so companies are absolutely focused on it, but it tends to be what comes last.
Mhm.
And so keeping that top of mind, getting the right, um, getting the right support from leadership inside of a facility and inside of a company are absolutely critical to ensure that the right protections are in place to protect that data as you go through that process.
No, for sure. And as you mentioned earlier, we'll see what the next 5 years brings and how different it's going to look. It's going to be a very exciting time to be sure. But thank you, Scott, for joining me today and providing these very thorough and very interesting insights on IIoT and maintenance. So I appreciate taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Right. Yeah, and if you enjoyed this video, you can find other videos in the Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge series on plantengineering.com. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, PlantEng Mag, which will have these interviews along with other interviews with other thought leaders on different topics relating to plant engineering and plant manufacturing. And I'm Chris Fabris, Senior Editor for Plant Engineering. Thank you for watching this edition of Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge.